These are the 15 things I wish I'd known before flying 12 hours to Hawaii. Tip number 1. Plan your flights wisely. Look for direct flights if you can to help minimize travel time and stress. Now, I was flying to Hawaii all the way from Orlando, which is a while away, so there were no direct flights available. On my way to Hawaii, I had a short 2-hour layover in Dallas, Texas, and on my way back from Hawaii, I had a similarly short 2-hour layover in Los Angeles. I've arrived in Dallas. This is my layover since I could not get a direct flight from Orlando to Hawaii. Not bad though, it's about a 2-hour layover, which is kind of enough time to get to my gate and like sit for like 30 minutes before we board. I'm so sleepy. I slept on my flight and I just want to keep sleeping. And that's what I intend to do. That's not to say that there won't be direct flights near you though. If you are headed to Hawaii, go ahead and check to see if there are direct options. It might even be worth spending a little bit more for your ticket. There are direct flights to Hawaii from around 25 US cities. If you must have a layover, aim for one that has good amenities and isn't too difficult to navigate. There are a couple notoriously tricky airports in the US for a layover. In fact, one of them is Dallas-Fort Worth, which is what I went through. But I had a very easy time. Oh, it's not even morning yet here. It's still dark outside. If you do have to book a flight with a layover, I do recommend a layover of about 90 minutes or more because sometimes navigating these airports can involve taking trams or trains to get from terminal to terminal if you have a long distance between the two gates. That can really eat up a lot of time. And if there's a slight delay on your incoming flight, you don't want to risk missing your outgoing flight just because of a 15-minute delay. Also, when you're booking your flight, you want to consider the time of day. Red-eye flights could help you with adjusting to Hawaii's time zone. From Orlando, Hawaii is a 5-hour time difference, and it's earlier. It goes backwards. I accidentally adjusted to the time zone effectively because my flight out was at 5 a.m., which meant a 3 a.m. airport arrival, leaving my house at 2:30 a.m. Okay, that's the time it is. 3:45 a.m. Flight leaves at 5:09, so boarding will happen in like an hour-ish, a little less. And I hadn't packed around like the night before, so no lie, I was packing until about 2:30 when I walked out the door. If you're asking yourself, did Quincy go to sleep last night? Obviously, the answer is no. I was packing up until I got in the car. So, sleep is coming on the plane. I don't recommend that. But staying up all night did make it so that I was actually pretty adjusted when we got to Hawaii. And of course, as with booking any flights, make sure to compare prices and flexibility when you are booking. Travel insurance might be worth it. My general rule is I skip travel insurance unless I'm going abroad. Hawaii is kind of a weird one though, because it is not abroad, it's domestic, but it's far enough that it flies kind of like an abroad flight. I did go for travel insurance in this instance, and you can book that when you are booking your flights with your airline. I made one major packing mistake on this trip, and I'm gonna make sure you don't do the same. Tip number 2, pack smart for those long flights. Bring a small personal item with essentials that is easy to reach when you're in your seat on the plane. This is gonna be things like headphones, a water bottle. I always bring lotion and chapstick because the air, when you're up there, dry. I don't know what's up with that. I mean, I do. It's just dry on an airplane, so bring lotion and chapstick. I'm gonna go a little bit into detail on some of my comfort items. I am well-versed in flying very long flights. I've been to Asia twice in about the past year, and that's 12-hour, 16-hour flight legs. Woo! Boy, there are some tricks to getting you comfortable on flights. I used to not be able to sleep on planes at all. Now, like a baby. And it's because of certain products, which I will explain. But you want those essentials in a carry-on that you can reach easily. Also, anything you're using for entertainment. I had my books in my personal item under the seat in front of me, and my laptop in case I wanted to get some work done. Now, if you're checking a bag, you also might want to have a few other things in your carry-on option. I don't typically check a bag. I'm big on flying with one carry-on and one personal item for most trips. But if you are checking a bag, then in your carry-on, you want to make sure you have at least a couple changes of clothes, some travel-sized toiletries, any medication, and particularly your chargers and electronics. Because with checking a bag, if that baggage gets lost, yikes, scary bad. So it'd be good to have a couple of things. And a change of clothes can be useful regardless. You never know what's going to happen on a travel day. Can be great for emergencies or just for making yourself comfortable. One of the biggest travel tips I've heard is that if you have your toothbrush and your personal item, brushing your teeth about an hour before the flight lands can be a great way to refresh. And don't forget some Disney themed items if you're headed to Aulani to stay on brand. I did wear my Mickey Mouse sweatshirt on the plane. Sweatshirt, also important. Planes have wonky temperatures. You kind of have to guess. Is it gonna be hot? Is it gonna be cold? Who knows? Be prepared for both. My big mistake here was not charging my airplane accessories. So my headphones were not charged. Turned out okay because I did have a charger, but make sure that the night before you travel, you're charging everything that you're going to want to use on the plane. Plus, electronics can be essential, especially your cell phone, so having a portable battery can be great for keeping your phone charged on long travel days. After all, that might be where you're accessing your boarding pass or your travel information. And there's one app that I swear saved me a ton of stress on this trip, and I will tell you about it in just a bit. Tip number 3, prepping for tropical weather. Hawaii is a tropical place in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. The sun is hot. The rain can be intense, as I found out. If you want to see that, you're going to want to subscribe so you can see my Aulani video tomorrow. It's a little brutal. And there are a couple of things that I didn't even know you need to worry about that you absolutely do. For instance, reef-safe sunscreen. You're going to want to pack reef-safe sunscreen because a lot of sunscreens are not safe for natural coral reefs. And when you're in Hawaii, you're probably going to be pretty close to coral reefs at some points. So pack reef-safe sunscreen or buy it once you're there, which because I'm a carry-on queen, I do tend to have to do that. Also, do not forget your sunglasses and a hat to protect yourself from the sun. In general, you want to pack breathable, lightweight clothing and likely a pair of sandals. My favorite thing to do is pack my chacos, which are an ergonomic sandal, so it's a lot easier to walk a really long way in them while still having the sandal vibe. And they're waterproof. And you'll want to include a rain jacket or umbrella for those surprise tropical showers. I actually have a poncho that is like a high-end poncho. It was expensive, but it works great to cover up all my equipment and me when I'm walking around in the rain. And don't forget bug spray, especially if you plan to explore outside of your resort, because the tropical destinations can get very buggy, so bug spray can be a big help. I'm one of those people that doesn't get bug bites. I don't know if you guys have any of those people in your life, but bugs don't bite me. I don't know if my blood tastes bad or what, but if bugs bite you a lot, you definitely want bug spray. Tip number 4, essential travel apps. Now, when you're doing a longer trip like this, you want to have a couple of apps at the ready, for sure. For instance, I like to use flight tracking apps. The one I use is FlightAware to keep real-time updates on my airplanes, where they are, where they're at, where they're going, when they're getting there, when they're leaving. I find that FlightAware tends to have more up-to-date information than even the airport apps or the actual airline apps. If you are going to Aulani, a Disney resort like I did, I highly recommend downloading the Aulani app in advance to go ahead and prep for the trip. Having the Aulani app means you can look through some of the activities that will be happening while you're there, as well as explore all of the different recreation and dining options around the resort. You can even make dining reservations right inside the app. And this is the app that saved me a ton of stress because I initially tried to make my Aulani reservations online. It was brutal. It was a nightmare. It was so difficult to get my reservations booked online. I mean, it wasn't brutal and I'm being dramatic, but it was hard to get reservations booked, to find good times and to look through the times. On the app, it was way easier to find good reservation times. So I highly recommend looking through the Aulani app in advance of your trip if you're headed to the resort. I also always download the airlines app a few days in advance of my trip and delete it a little bit after so it doesn't take up space on my phone. So in this case, American on the way there, Delta on the way back, have those apps a few days in advance so that you can check in the app, and if you're not checking a bag, skip the check-in process at the airport altogether. And I highly recommend screenshotting all itineraries and boarding passes so you can access them in your phone gallery just in case you lose service or the app glitches out, which has happened to me many times. Just screenshot the passes just in case. And you'll want to have Google Maps installed. You probably do. This is one of those apps that everybody has, but Google Maps can be a huge help, not only when you land and you need to get to your destination, but also when you're in the airport. Google Maps is actually how I tend to find food and drink options while I'm at the airport. You can just zoom in and see all the food and drink. Makes it a lot easier than finding an airport directory. Tip number 5, choosing the right seats. When you're booking these really long flights, the right seat can be very important. In particular, on my flight from Dallas to Hawaii, this was an international style aircraft. That means 3 seats on either side and 4 seats in the middle. We found out about this trip pretty late, so when I booked the flights about a month out, there were very few seats left. So the earlier in advance you book, the better selection of seats you're going to have. If you're traveling solo, like I tend to do, I like a window seat for the leaning against the window and the views. I like to get videos out my window. But you might prefer the aisle seat for a little bit more breathing room and easier access to getting up, stretching your legs, going to the bathroom, things like that. Obviously, you want to avoid the middle seat. Sometimes that's unavoidable. And my comfort products do make the middle seat a lot more tolerable, so I promise I will tell you about those. If you're traveling as a family, book seats together and try to aim for bulkhead rows for a little bit extra space. And you can always budget for upgrades as well. If this is your first time flying in a long flight like this, you might want to budget for premium economy to get a little bit extra legroom. And a big one is to avoid sitting too close to the bathrooms if you're sensitive to noise or smells. There is a website called Seat Guru, which I use when booking longer flights when I have the option to choose my seat. With this website, you can put in your flight and then it will tell you what seats are good, bad, what seats might be problematic. Especially on these larger airplanes, sitting too close to the bathroom or the galley where the staff will be preparing any food items can mean a lot more noise. And if you already have trouble getting rest on a plane and you need to, that might even be worth paying for a different seat. We're all booked, and now I'm going to say something that some of you might hate me for saying, but if you're one of those people who cuts it close for flights, this next tip might be the one you need to change how you travel forever. I admit it. I've missed a flight before. I cut it too close. I am not a person who cuts it close. I arrive 2 hours in advance of a domestic flight and 3 hours in advance of an international flight. I don't play. But one time I did oversleep and I full out missed a flight to New York City because I didn't leave my house until about 2 hours before the plane took off. I was at the airport 90 minutes in advance and the security line was too long. Especially with more expensive flights, like your flight to Hawaii might be, you do not want to play with the amount of time you give yourself at the airport. It's very possible that you'll arrive, you don't have to do check-in because you're carrying on a bag, you have TSA pre-check or the security line is just short, and you're at your gate within a matter of 20 or 30 minutes. Sure, that's very possible. It's also very possible, particularly if you live in Orlando and have to go to MCO, that you arrive and it's too early for TSA pre-check, so you have to wait in the regular line, and it's 45 minutes. And it is no joke, 45 minutes, if not more. There have been many occasions where I've arrived to the airport 2 hours in advance and still had some level of stress about making it to my gate in time for boarding. Orlando is a bit notorious in this area, so you might have a little bit more confidence at the airport that you're flying out of, but with any flight, you gotta arrive early. There is nothing worse than losing out on hundreds of dollars, if not more, because you missed a flight. And the worst thing that can happen if you get there early is you get to get yourself a little snack. So, I don't know. Don't cut it close, people. Learn from my mistakes. Tip number 7, maximizing layover downtime. I didn't have a ton of layover downtime on this trip, just 2 hours either way, which is honestly ideal in my opinion, but there's a chance you might end up with 3 or 4 hours, or depending where you're flying from and what flight times work for you, there could even be longer layovers, one that goes overnight or maybe 8-ish hours. If I have a layover that is more than 2 hours, I start to look into airport lounges. If you have access through a frequent flyer program or through a credit card, great. I don't yet. Working on it. But you can still use airport lounges. Look into the lounge options at the airport that you're visiting and see if any of them offer day passes. Many airport lounges will offer day passes to folks flying on their respective airline. Usually these passes are around $50 to $70, and with the fact that food and alcohol is free in the lounges, it's often not too different from what you would pay for food and drinks in the airport while you were hanging out. And nowadays, there are actually some airports that are geared towards just your everyday traveler that offer day passes all the time. Make sure you read up. I don't ever do this in advance. I just kind of decide when I'm at the airport if I want to see if there are any lounges I can access. But read up to see what their policies are. For some lounges, you can't actually enter the lounge until a certain number of hours before your flight. So read up on the policy, check if they have any day passes, and if your layover is over 3 hours, consider a lounge. Regardless of whether you are in a lounge or not, you want to find a quiet space with some charging options. I like to charge all of my devices every time I'm in an airport. I also immediately get on airport Wi-Fi. Typically, you can actually download a few things on airport Wi-Fi too, so a layover is a great time to get some movies or music downloaded on your phone for the flight. Another major tip I have here is to make sure that you are fed. On the way to Hawaii, my long flight did have a meal on board. It was kind of a strange meal. It was a buffalo chicken wrap, and it did have blue cheese dressing, which just doesn't feel like a crowd pleaser to me. I liked it, but a lot of people around me did not. But on the way back, neither of my flights offered a meal, so it was really important that I ate during my layover. You can find out if your flight is going to be offering a meal in your airline app with your flight details. So make sure everybody's fed and make sure your water bottles are full. If you do have a long layover, research nearby attractions and consider leaving the airport to go check one of them out. You could also go get a meal outside of the airport. Airport meals are depressing. We all know it. We all know it's true. See if there's a cool restaurant nearby that you could ride share to. I'm outside the airport. I only have a 2-hour layover, so it's kind of silly to be outside, but my gate is just inside. I have TSA pre-check and I have a little bit over 2 hours, so I'm out here to do something very exciting because you can always do an activity if you have a longer layover. And I have a very specific activity planned. Hello, Winston. Hello, nice to meet you. This is the best.
Texas. I meant for more than an hour.
Yeah, that's fair. Hello, Winston. You are such a cutie patootie. Oh my gosh, it's because it's chilly.
I told you.
Hello, Winston. But again, make it back 2 hours in advance of your flight. Tip number 8. Food prep for the flight. I didn't even know I was going to be talking about this, and I just really yelled about food for a minute. Not only should you check if your airline provides meals on board, you should maybe Google to see if they're worth relying on. Some airplane food is just not good, and if you have picky eaters or dietary restrictions, it can be a real struggle to eat on the airplane. Especially if you have kids, it's pretty important to pack your favorite snacks. It can be hard to maintain kids' delicate ecosystems on a long flight, and having goldfish really could save the day. Also for you, packing a protein bar could be a big lifesaver if anything does go wrong with time changes and how you've planned to eat. I got sick on the way to Hawaii because I didn't quite space out my eating right because the time changes were messing with me. Having a protein bar would have been a big save. Did I have one? No. Learn from my mistakes. I know I've said this already, but hydration is key. Bring a refillable water bottle. I actually have a smaller version of my regular water bottle that I bring specifically for flights. Bring it empty to the airport and then use a water bottle refill station once you get through security. Tip number 9, entertainment for your flight. Now, a lot of flights, if they're 4 hours or more, tend to have seat back entertainment options. Or even if they don't, they have in-flight Wi-Fi that you can use exclusively to access entertainment and then prop your phone up in the back of the seat. So there's a lot of options for entertainment on flights nowadays. However, I still like to be prepared. I always come with about 10 long-form YouTube videos downloaded. You can also download your favorite shows. You can download stuff off of Disney Plus or download a podcast or an entire musical album. That's a trick of mine. It's like watching a movie, but with no movie and with just music and it's in your ears. That's why I like musical theater, kids. This is another one of those reasons why that portable charger and battery packs is gonna be so helpful. A lot of planes do have USB ports or plugs where you can plug stuff in, and I do recommend using that if it is an option to you to save your battery life. Sometimes they don't work, so don't rely on them. Make sure you have a portable battery with you. And kids might get bored just watching stuff, so you can always pack coloring books, games, or other activities to keep them entertained. I'm a big fan of watching movies on planes. I love getting in that seatback monitor and seeing what they have. My typical choices are horror, which I think is a weird thing to watch on a plane, but I really like watching horror movies on a plane, and then usually Coco. Tip number 10. This is the big one. Comfort on a long flight. I consider myself a bit of a connoisseur of items to bring on a long flight. I have totally transformed the way I fly. I used to be able to never fall asleep, no matter how tired I was sitting up on a plane. Now, out like a light, out like a little baby. Sleep very good on plane, you know? First things first, stretchy, breathable clothing and layers. For me, it's very big that my clothes don't have any seams or tags that are scratching at me. And I always wear a sweatshirt, but without a hood, because I find that a hood messes with my leaning back. So I actually have a couple of travel sets that I always wear. Everything stretchy, everything kind of loose and comfortable, because you want to be as comfortable as possible. So bring out the big guns. I know you have the pair of pants. I know you have the pair of pants that is the only pair of pants you want to wear after a long day. Wear that pair of pants. To get cozy on a flight, use a neck pillow and a small blanket. My holy grail item is my travel blanket. It is a blanket. I got it on Amazon. It is kind of like a soft, fuzzy material. It looks like a pillow. And then when you unzip it and pull it out, it is kind of like a Snuggie, but basically you put the hood on your head. There's no blanket material that goes behind you. The blanket just kind of throws over your shoulders and then goes in front of you. It makes it so that there's no bulkiness behind me in the seat. I am fully covered. It's really easy for me to have my arms outside of the blanket. And there's a pocket right in my lap, which is where I keep my phone and my glasses when I'm snoozing. I love this thing. People do make fun of me because I look a bit like the Grim Reaper. Breedlove was really shocked when he saw this for the first time when we were flying to New Orleans for the Amazing Race. I am quite happy with this blanket. I intend to use it on every flight forever. I love this thing. I also use a turtleneck pillow. This is a more expensive neck pillow, but it is one that I can highly recommend. It's weird. Like, you imagine a travel neck pillow, you imagine that like partial donut. It is like a neck brace, kind of, and you sort of like rest on it like this. It's honestly not any more comfy than the donuts are, but I've never had neck pain after using it, and that's not true of anything else, which is the big thing, is to not end up with stiff neck. So, turtle travel pillow. My other favorite item on a plane, noise-canceling Bluetooth headphones. This is great whether you are watching something, listening to something, or not listening to anything and just trying to get some sleep, because it cancels out that low rumble hum of the airplane. I have pretty cheap ones from JBL, and they are Bluetooth, so they connect to my phone via Bluetooth. What if I want to watch something on seatback entertainment? That I also have a solution for. I have a little device called the AirFly. This is a Bluetooth adapter that you plug into the headphone jack on the seatback, and then it turns into a little Bluetooth beacon for your Bluetooth headphones. It is so easy to use. The battery life on it is so long. I forget to charge it all the time, and it still plugs right in, is great to use. This is how I watch all movies, and I don't have cords hanging down in front of me in an already restricted space. This and the blanket are my two biggest must-haves, I think. But all of these, if you want a travel kit, blanket you love, turtle pillow, noise-canceling headphones, Bluetooth adapter, and one I haven't mentioned, eye mask. Very important to have an eye mask. I always thought eye masks were not that helpful. I was like, oh, I can just fall asleep. No, I've never been able to fall asleep on a plane. Getting rid of lights behind my eyes, even if they're minor, major help to falling asleep. Those are the things that I highly, highly, highly recommend having. And it truly transformed my ability to sleep on a plane. And I will never go without these things. Tip number 11, dealing with turbulence or travel anxiety. Turbulence doesn't make me anxious, but it does tend to make me a little sick. And I do get travel anxiety, especially for these longer trips, and especially when they're work trips, because there's a lot to do. I get really nervous. Everything's anxiety inducing on the travel day. When you are feeling these feelings, it can be a great time to whip out those noise canceling headphones and isolate some of the stressors in the environment. It's also a great time to do some deep breathing. It sounds kind of cheesy, it sounds a little too easy, but doing deep breathing on the plane can be a huge help. In fact, many of the seatback entertainment systems do have mindfulness and deep breathing courses that you can queue up, or just like nice nature videos to help calm down a bit. Distracting yourself can be great for the anxiety. Your favorite podcast, your favorite book, your favorite movie, that's the way to go. Why do you think I watch Coco every flight? It's my favorite movie. It makes me feel calm. It makes me feel familiar. And I love watching Coco to just kind of get rid of the jitters. If you know that turbulence really bothers you, choose a seat over the wings. A seat over the wings means less turbulence. So that is a great tip. It won't completely get rid of it, but it can be helpful. But prepare for small bumps along the way as part of the journey. It is normal and safe. Whenever you fly through a cloud, there's going to be a little bump. I totally get the nerves on planes. Try to keep yourself distracted, try to keep yourself calm. And if you've got a friend with you, let them know that you have anxiety so that they can support you. So we don't want travel anxiety to ruin our trip, but there is another monster rearing its head when it comes to travel, and that is jet lag. Jet lag could totally ruin your first day in Hawaii, so don't miss this next tip, which will help you adjust before you even land. Tip number 12, time zone adjustment. The biggest tip for adjusting for time zones is to start adjusting your sleep schedule a few days in advance of your trip. We can't always do this depending on other obligations we have, but as much as you can, this can be huge. When I went to Hong Kong, that is a 12-hour time difference. I was able to flip my sleep schedule a week in advance of the trip. I still had some trouble once there, particularly with eating, but I think it helped massively in not making the jet lag as big of a monster. As soon as your travel day starts, start operating on your destination's time. I immediately had the Hawaii clock pulled up in my phone. I knew what Hawaii time it was, and I knew if it was appropriate for me to sleep or not by Hawaii time standards. The longer you can stay awake, the more likely you're going to be able to go to sleep when you should be asleep in Hawaii. So it can be wise to push it. Now, this can't always happen when you've got little kiddos, especially because it can be a blessing just to get them to sleep on the flight. But as much as you can, adjusting to that destination time zone is big. Once you arrive, try to plan to spend some time outside in the sunlight. The more you're exposed to natural light, the faster your body's clock is going to be able to adjust. And it can also help to have some of those items I mentioned earlier to get better sleep on the plane. Tip number 13, what to expect upon arrival. So the Honolulu airport, prepare for a long walk from the gate to baggage claim. I felt lost a few times because the Honolulu airport is inside and outside. So there was a point where I thought I was outside the airport. I was not. I was going the right way, but it was a long walk to baggage claim and a lot of inside outside. There was a big open courtyard area, and there was a part where some military planes flew over, which was awesome. It's a beautiful airport. It feels a bit dated, but it is gorgeous, and it gives you your first taste of the Hawaiian wildlife. Now, when I was at the Honolulu airport, it was pretty slow. There wasn't a lot going on, but sometimes you can find live music and other cultural touches around the airport that can start getting you in the mood of your Hawaiian vacation. The biggest thing to know about Hawaii is to be patient. Hawaii has a more relaxed pace. The speed limits are slower. Things just move at a bit slower of a pace, and that's even true at the airport. So be patient. And a great way to save time after landing is to arrange transportation in advance, but you absolutely don't have to do this. I am big on ride sharing from the airport. It's easy. You don't have to think about it too much in advance. You just have to make sure that ride shareability is something you can expect at your destination, and it absolutely is in Hawaii. That said, I chose to rent a car during my trip to Hawaii because we were going to be seeing a lot of the island. So I had to pick up my car from the car rental space. And I did get lost, but luckily everybody is very, very nice at Hawaii, so I got help. Tip 14, the fun begins early. Now I'm going to talk about this as if you're headed to Aulani, a Disney resort, because that's what I did, but this is actually true of many different resort and stay options. Theming starts right at the resort entrance to Aulani. Look for Disney details as soon as you arrive. You can expect to see characters like Mickey, Moana, and even Duffy during your stay. And really bask in the welcome. Listen to the Hawaiian music. Say hi to the cast members. They had Mickey and Minnie fruit water. I like fruit water. It was delicious. So let yourself relax as soon as you arrive at your resort. Get your bags in, whether your room's ready or not. Decompress. You've had a long travel day. It's time to take that big deep breath. At Aulani specifically, you'll find a really awesome blend of familiar Disney magic with authentic Hawaiian culture. It's a wonderful environment to go ahead and relax from a long travel day. Now, perhaps our most important tip. Let me tell you a secret about saving some money at the airport. It's easier than you think, but only if you plan ahead. Here are some budget tips for flights and airport expenses. The biggest one is to book flights early or use miles and rewards to save on costs. Booking your flight well in advance typically means you'll get the lower rates. I highly recommend using Google Flights. It's what I use to peruse flights, and I really get in there and mess around with the filters to try to find the flight that is best for me. I don't know if it's a rumor that flights are cheaper on Tuesdays, but I always book on Tuesdays. I feel like I have pretty good luck getting pretty cheap flights. Flew round trip to Hawaii this time for about $450. Round trip from Orlando. The other great thing about Google Flights is it will actually tell you when prices are expected to rise or get lower. So that can be helpful if you are like, oh, if I wait 5 days, this price might drop. Thanks, Google. Airport food is overpriced. We know this. It's also usually not great. Try to avoid overpriced airport food by eating meals at home in advance or bringing a meal for the airport. And this is another place where that reusable water bottle will help you skip paying for drinks repeatedly. Another huge tip, especially if you're flying on a budget airline, is to research baggage costs and hidden fees ahead of time. A lot of airlines will try to hit you with hidden fees. You'll see the lowest rate, you'll be like, oh, amazing. And then as you're checking out, the fees start to add up. So research different baggage costs and things like that to make sure that you can fly within the parameters of your budget, even with the bags you need to bring. What I will say is, especially on these budget airline sites, always, always, always look for the button that says, no, I don't need this, decline, skip this step. It's usually small, it's usually hidden at the bottom. It usually feels like you have to pick one of the paid options. You probably do not. When you're flying on a budget airline, you can pay for just your ticket and nothing else. That's normally how I do it. Don't let it trick you into thinking you have to upcharge for bags, upcharge for seat selection. You don't have to. Let them randomize your seats. If you're buying the tickets together, odds are you're going to be seated together, especially if you're buying well in advance before seats start to fill up. And just like that, I think we've made it to Hawaii.